All right. Welcome to Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast with myself, your freedom coach, Natasha Miller. And we are here for the final segment for our theme for this month of February, which is unpacking traumas, not traumas, triggers. That's what we're unpacking for the month of February. And so far this month, we talked about how to identify your triggers because to unpack them, we must identify them. And we talked about how to transform your triggers into freedom strategies. And so tonight, we're going to have a trauma trigger assessment where you can assess where you are in the process of transforming your triggers. Hey, lady, welcome. And, and so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. All right, so let's get started for our topic this evening, trauma trigger assessment. But before we get into that, welcome again to Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast. Trauma Talk Radio is an unconventional podcast where we help people live a trauma-free lifestyle, one candid conversation at a time. And there are three components. We have our interview shorts, and that's when I'm out and about living life, attending events, and we interview everyday people about overcoming life traumas, and we share those. We also have Dear Freedom Coach, and that's the component where I do short clips and answering interview questions that are sent in. And then lastly, we have our Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast Tuesdays here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the unique thing about our live broadcast is that viewers have an opportunity to call in. Yes, you could call in and join me here on the platform via StreamYard for a candid conversation about overcoming life traumas. And I'm going to put the link in the comments now before I forget. Okay, so that's all the goodness about Trauma Talk Radio. Okay, so let's get into our content. We start off with content, and then we open the lines where viewers can call in for our live broadcast. So trauma violates your internal sense of safety, security, and stability. And triggers recall the residue of your trauma history. Triggers also invite you to pursue inner healing, renew your mindset, declutter, prioritize, and rest, depending upon why you are experiencing a trauma trigger in the first place. So let's assess your trauma triggers. There are 4 levels in this assessment to really help us identify where we are in the process of transforming our triggers into freedom strategies. So the first level is trauma trigger, a trauma trigger. And it's basically a temper tantrum. That's what a trauma trigger is. So it's immediately when we experience a trigger and we are just stimulated emotionally and mentally, we are very reactive and impulsive. Whatever we feel in that moment to do in that moment without thinking, we just do it in that moment. It exposes unresolved, unprocessed, and unhealed trauma that's suppressed deeply within the soul, and it communicates our need to recover and heal. It is a sign that, okay, there is some trauma recovery that's needed because I am reacting in my now based off of past experiences. And so we definitely want to come out of this level. We really want to be beyond this first level, the trauma trigger. And one of the things in doing this assessment, we'll notice that in some areas of our lives, we may be on one level, other areas, another level. But we definitely want to accept the invitation of our trauma triggers to engage in introspective thinking, investigation, to heal and recover from past traumas so that we are not in a trauma responsive mode, because that's another thing about this level. We're just trauma responsive. So number 2, the second level is transforming trigger. Transforming trigger. And it is a venting moment. Definitely different than a temper tantrum. Temper tantrum is just full of emotions, irrational thinking, all of that. But for a venting moment, it's intentional and it's constructive, because the purpose of the vent is to process our initial thoughts and emotional responses to the trigger. So I'm not venting just to blow off steam, have a tantrum, get attention, have people have pity for me. But no, I'm venting. I'm just expressing how I feel, what I'm thinking, why I feel the way that I feel, why I think the way that I think, and exploring my options and how I should respond. So it's not reactive. It's really taking that pause moment to really reflect upon the trigger and how you're responding to the trigger, to respond and not react based on how you're being stimulated. So that's what a transforming trigger is. And it occurs during your soul trauma recovery process. So this means that you're aware of some past unprocessed traumas and that you're actually doing the work to overcome them. You're also aware of some tools to replace your triggers, and you're still doing the work to learn how to replace your natural instinctive trauma responses to the trigger with those tools and freedom strategies. So it's the training phase that I call it, is when you're being trained to transform your trigger into a freedom strategy until it no longer occurs, because our triggers can be eliminated. Yes, they can. We do not have to live with triggers. We can go through the process of eliminating triggers from our lives and really living on the other side in freedom. So this is the transforming trigger, second level. All right, third, treasure trigger. It is a challenging moment for the treasure trigger. Now, this is when you're triggered by someone else's wholeness and maturation in an area that you're still evolving in. Okay, so it's when someone else's wholeness and maturity in an area where you're still growing and healing triggers you. And it communicates the need to connect with them, to capture the treasure they carry that can accelerate your transformation process. Now, the reason why I call a treasure trigger a challenging moment, because if we don't understand that that's what's happening, we can misinterpret the trigger and take on offense. We can become offensive and defensive based upon that encounter. And also, we could take on intimidation. In some ways, we may feel intimidated by that person because of their growth and development in that particular area, where we still feel like we're small because we're still working on growing in that area. So I say bypass the offense, let that go, bypass the intimidation, and say, hey, this is an opportunity for me to accelerate this process, because apparently they on the other side and they may be carrying a treasure that can help me get to the other side quicker. And that's really what it's all about. If someone when we meet people in our lives that has done the work that we're in the process of doing for the health of our souls, they are carrying tools that can help us accelerate our process because they've already pioneered the way to freedom in that particular area. So why, go through a process? Why be in the process longer when it could be accelerated? So you definitely want to connect with that person. And the number 4, the last level, this is the level that we want to be in. This is the level when we know that we are on the other side, that we have eliminated our triggers and fully transformed them into freedom strategies. And I suggest going back to the last episode 5, where I actually talked about transforming triggers because it really breaks down all of that. Right now, we're just assessing to see where we are. But in the last Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast, we really broke down those levels and how to actually transform your triggers into freedom strategies and why it is necessary. So, transference trigger is a defining moment. It's opposite than the treasure trigger. Transference trigger is when you're the one carrying the treasure. You're the one that has the treasure. And you feel the turbulence of someone else being triggered by your wholeness, healing, and maturity in an area that they're in the process of growing. It regurgitates their suppressed trauma and stimulates introspection within them. And it is an opportunity for you to extend grace as a safe space for their transformation process in that moment. So, the interesting thing about transference triggers is that it feels like you're being triggered because it's very relatable to your story. So you're not necessarily being triggered. And then you wonder, like, do I need to go and get healed and stuff? Like, why am I being triggered right now when nothing's happened? All I did was walk in the room. All I did was say hello to this person. And now I feel like I'm being triggered. And it's like, no, that's because you're not. You're feeling the energy of them because they're being triggered by you. They're being triggered by your light. They're being triggered by your healing and wholeness. And they are in need of the treasure you are carrying because they're in the process of coming to the other side that you have acquired in your life in that particular area. All right. And that's that with that. Any questions? If anyone's still here for the live broadcast, please let me know in the chat if you have any questions or comments. That is my content for this evening on how to assess your trauma triggers to identify where you are in the process of transforming your triggers into freedom strategies. And the line is now open if there's anyone still here for the live broadcast where you could call in if you would like to join me here on the platform for a candid conversation. And the conversation doesn't necessarily always have to be according to the content that I share. It's open. It could be about anything that may be on your heart as it pertains to overcoming life traumas. So until I see any comments or things of that nature, I'm going to go into my closing remarks. And then if anything pops up, I'll engage with that. Because remember, Trauma Talk Radio is all about dialogue and conversation. Okay. Hey, all right. You still here? Hey. Please let me know if you have a question. And the link is in the comments if you would like to come on. But remember, Trauma Talk Radio is all about conversation. It's all about dialogue. So for these broadcasts to be longer, viewers have to engage in the comments if they're not comfortable with coming on, or actually come on and have conversation. Otherwise, I wrap it up after doing the content. because it's not monologue, just me talk. We're supposed to be talking together. Yes, yes, yes. And that's one of the things I always encourage people when we do our interview shorts while out and about, because sometimes we'll have people feel apprehensive to participate because they think that they won't give an educated response or this, that, and the other, or they think they may not answer the question in the right way, in the way that I may expect them to. And I'm like, listen, you be you. Be authentic, be yourself. Answer it based on how you feel led to answer the question. Like, there's no right or wrong way to answer the question, and there's no right or wrong answer, because we're all different. And the thing about trauma is subjective as well. So what may be traumatic to me may not be traumatic for you. And so we can learn from one another based on how we view traumatic experiences in different ways in which we navigate. So that's one of the things I always encourage. Then they do awesome interviews too. And I'm like, why was you apprehensive in the first place? And you just gave all those great nuggets. But yeah. Okay, so stay connected. Make sure you follow me on all not freedom. What you call them platforms? Social media outlets at Freedom Coach M Miller. I have to think, what is my handle? And visit my website at www.c as in cat number 4 L as in love global.com to download my free ebook. Also to see what events that I have coming up. I have a Transforming Grief Intensive coming up. That's in person in the Bay Area in March. And then there will be an announcement sometime in March for the one that I'll have in April that's online for people who are not in this area. Also share with others. Please share with others about Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast. Also on my website, you'll see information about my Trauma Talk Today show. And that's the show where I actually have guest speakers come on and share their story. So if you have a trauma to triumph story that you would like to share, the information is on my website too, as to how you can explore the possibilities of being a guest speaker. And I have a few months still open for this year. And stay tuned for more details for my Freedom and Fun Academy online membership program that's opening up very, very soon. And then chime in for our next Trauma Talk Radio live broadcast next Tuesday. We are in March next Tuesday. So for the month of March, our theme is investigating childhood traumas. Woo! Investigating childhood traumas is our theme for March. So we're going to talk about why it's important to revisit childhood traumas whenever we experience a traumatic experience in our adulthood that recalls a childhood traumatic experience. So if we have a trauma experience that we experience as adults and it brings back to our remembrance a particular traumatic experience for our childhood, that is an invitation to revisit that childhood trauma, to heal from it, to rewrite the narrative. And so we're going to talk about what it means to do that, why it's necessary to do that, and the healthy way to engage in that process, and how you're going to walk in more freedom on the other side of that process, as well as how me, your freedom coach, can help you in that process. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about in March. So that's that with that. Are there any questions? Please let me know if you have any questions or topic suggestions. Are there? Let me try to Type it. And if there's nothing else, I'm going to get ready to close on out of here. I'll put that in there. I'll put that on here. So even for those of you who catch the replay, will see this question and know that I'll still get a notification if you comment in the chat, even when it's during the replay. So are there any questions or topic suggestions? And that's that with that. But yeah, so super duper excited. So in closing, just know that it's all about empowering one another with our life experiences and how we're all still here. Every one of us has experienced some type of trauma because we have experienced something in life that caused us to feel internally unsafe, insecure, emotionally, mentally, spiritually unstable. And yet we're still here. So why not share with one another some of the things that worked for us, some of the things that didn't, and how we're still evolving into the best version of ourselves despite the traumatic experiences we have encountered, we're currently up against, and those we may possibly experience in the future. Because in this life, trauma surrounds us every day. Even if it's not something that happens to us, we witness traumatic experiences happen in the lives of others. And so we want to just enhance our ability to navigate those situations and life challenges in a healthy way to where we're still coming out on the other side better than we were before. So those are my closing remarks. This is your Freedom Coach, Natasha Miller, signing off until next time. Peace and freedom. And thank you so much for those of you who were here for the live broadcast and those of you who catch the replay. Until next Tuesday, bye-bye.